What's up, basketball fans, and welcome to the season premiere of the Raptors Endgame podcast here on Raptors Republic. I'm your host, Lukas Weese, and I'm pleased to be joined by someone that doesn't need an introduction, but I'll give it to him anyways. He is Marc Spears. He's the senior NBA writer for ESPN's The Undefeated, as well as the co-author of the New York Times recommended Spencer Haywood rulebook. And he joins me on the Raptors Endgame podcast. Marc, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, man, I wish I was in Toronto or Canada doing it with you.
Likewise. Listen, I mean, we'll start there. Of course, the Raptors winning the NBA championship in 2019. I'm sure you've been to Toronto many times. Like, what are your thoughts on Toronto and Canada's one of Canada's jewel cities?
I mean, I love it. My first trip to Canada was actually Vancouver as a child. And when I started covering NBA in '99, actually, I'll never forget my first road trip covering the Denver Nuggets was to Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
And I just fell in love with the city. I live in the Bay Area, so Vancouver reminds me of San Francisco a lot in terms of being on the ocean and metropolitan, and I love the diversity there, the food, great Asian food there.
Yes.
And then I've been back there a few times, even though the Grizzlies have left, but I still, remember going to Grizzlies games, man. Like with General Motors Center or something like that. And it's, to me, a shame that, Vancouver doesn't have a team, because I didn't think it was there long enough. I didn't think it was given a chance long enough. I think that, from going to a preseason game, Kevin Durant's actually first preseason game with the Warriors was in Vancouver, and it was sold out. So I know the NBA's talked about expansion. Vancouver's name, I don't know if it's come up at all, but if it was up to me, just give Seattle and Vancouver the teams back. And I think they're most deserving. And then also, I also fell in love with Toronto from the first time I've been there. Another place where I love the diversity. The food scene there is outstanding. I loved having the Caribbean food there.
Yep.
And just the people are just cool, man. The atmosphere is cool. And when I went to the finals, I just, one thing that always stood out is the passion in which the fans sing, "Oh, Canada," man. That brought me chills. That brought me chills of pride in having the finals, the pride in your country. And so I certainly miss, when you talk about, due to the pandemic, places I haven't had a chance to go to, Toronto's definitely in the top 3, top 5. I can't wait to go back. But, the world is what it is, man. So we'll have to patiently wait. And I wish us down here were doing things as brilliantly in terms of the pandemic that Canada is. We certainly could take a lot of lessons from you guys.
No doubt. And yeah, it's just crazy how much the world has changed. You look at 2019 and I remember that game 1 of the NBA Finals, the first Canada sun at an NBA Finals, and all the Jurassic Parks popping up throughout the country. And now it's just non-existent. No fans. The Raptors in Tampa Bay for the first part of the season. And I guess, Marc, for you, as a reporter, it's,
and I'm gonna stop you real quick. You mentioned Jurassic Park. I think the Warriors, they'll be mad at me saying this, but copied that idea.
Oh, interesting.
We didn't get a chance to see it because they got a new arena, but outside the Chase Center where the Warriors play is a huge screen.
Yeah.
And it's the only place in San Francisco where they allowed such a screen to exist.
Oh, wow.
So I think the hope was that, there's a lot of restaurants and stuff that they're putting right there that are still work in progress because the world has slowed down. But I think the hope is, like, during home games, road games, that people that don't go into the game will congregate and watch games from there. have dinner, and then chill out and watch the rest of the game.
No, that's interesting. Like, I think it's a great concept. It's certainly great in Toronto. I think the fact that in normal times it was not like a big space. It was very close, so a lot of fans could pack in there. And I remember during the finals, like, there were people would line up for like a couple days just to get into to Jurassic Park. So it was a really amazing moment, and here's hoping we get back to that once again, those atmospheres. But Marc, I mean, for you as an NBA reporter, journalist, we're 1 week into this new NBA season. It just feels like yesterday we were watching bubble basketball, and now a new season has started. I'm just curious for you, how has your role and sort of changed? I mean, obviously, you know, lots of Zoom calls, lots of Zoom press conferences, not as many one-on-ones, but I guess, you know, the objective remains the same, trying to tell the best story. I'm just curious your thoughts as we, you know, embark on the second week of the season.
I have to be much more creative. I'm a guy that lives in the locker room, a guy that lives with the walk-off interview, likes visiting with players, likes visiting with coaches at shoot-arounds. And so I've talked to a couple reporters. If that's where you kind of eat, you know, you kind of feel like you got your legs cut off from it. I don't want to be on the Zoom with everybody else. So I want to get my own interviews and get my own time with the subject. And so it has caused me to be more creative, try to get more interviews on the phone. Not that I didn't do that a lot already, but like, for example, living in the Bay Area, I go to a lot of Warriors games. I go to a lot of Kings games. Kings are about 90-minute ride away, depending on the traffic. And the Kings played the Suns on Sunday night. It's like, I could have went, but I didn't go because I can't have access to anybody. And I could be there and watch it in person, but if I can't have access to anybody, I might as well just watch it on my couch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what's the point of driving 2 hours if I can't see anybody? But that being said, like, when the Warriors have home games, if I'm in town, I'll drive to 8 miles, go to that. And the one benefit of going to a Warriors game right now is you get a free COVID test. And you can take a COVID test to go in. So I'm like, shoot.
Might as well take advantage of that.
So, yeah. So it's just caused me to probably squeeze the PR people a lot more than I typically would. And so do a lot of things on Zoom, do a lot of videos where I would be there interviewing them. Like, we're doing a James Wiseman diary. I saw James Wiseman since he's been drafted once from 20 feet away. When we did our first diary, it was like this. It was like a Zoom call. So hopefully at some point we could do the diary in person, but it's very possible that I could do a diary with somebody entire season and actually not even be in their presence. So that's the difference.
Yeah, and like, I think it's interesting because obviously teams are allowing limited media members in attendance, like you mentioned, the Golden State Warriors, but you're right. Like, it sort of takes away from the experience, especially for someone experienced like yourself that's been covering the NBA for years, knows what it's like when there's a full house in an arena, knows what it's like when there's that, you know, personal one-on-one locker room experience. Does it make your job less enjoyable now, given that you're just doing this sort of Zoom, you know, press conference video, or do you still find ways to love what you're doing, keep motivated, etc.?
Man, I got a job, brother.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of people not working right now, and I've always had this blessing of a job I have in perspective. I write about basketball for a living. Yeah. I get paid to watch games. People like you, for some reason, care to hear what I have to say about it. Like, so I will never take this for granted, man. I dreamed of being a sports writer when I was in the 7th grade, made it come true. My passion has always been basketball. So to go to NBA games, to know players, to have players, current and former players that are like friends of mine, to like get a call from Tony Parker or Clyde Drexler, hey man, what's going on? You know what I mean? Kenny Martin, Chauncey Billups. To have done this since '99, and it'll never get old. And I think what has happened has made me appreciate the game even more. I don't care if it's Cleveland versus Orlando. I want to go. You know what I mean? I appreciate the crowd, and I think the same thing is happening with players in terms of. I did interview Steph face to face, Steph Curry, the former Toronto resident.
Yes.
We had to take rapid tests and everything, and he acted like he was like, "Man, I miss talking to you, miss seeing you around." Before Thompson got hurt, I talked to him, and he was like, "Man, didn't you interview me like right before I got drafted to the Warriors?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "We went to such and such restaurant." I'm like, "Yeah, man, we should go to the restaurant again." Like, so I was like, "Wow, the players are starting to like even miss us."
Yeah.
Like when they go back, they're gonna be signing every autograph, taking every picture, man.
Yeah.
This generation of players right now, like that had to play through this pandemic, I think just the littlest things, even if it's a small crowd, it's probably special to them. It means something to them, and they'll never take playing in a game for granted, and I'll never, ever take going to a game for granted.
Let's talk a little Toronto Raptors. I mean, obviously, as we're recording this, they're 2 games into the season, and look, a lot of people on Raptors Twitter, I mean, have no chill, so to speak, as the kids say today. I mean, 0-2 start, certainly unlike this team that's been so successful the last few years. And I think what I've noticed, Mark, and maybe you could comment on this as well, is just how much they miss a guy like Marc Gasol. I mean, Marc Gasol leaves, Aaron Baines in now, and I feel like, again, small sample size, but the interior defense maybe not as potent and as physical as we once saw with this team for the last few years. I mean,
that's a combination of Mark and Serge.
Yes,
being gone. I think the one thing that is hard for fans to do is you're so excited about the beginning of the season, and the first week, if it's great, like for the Cleveland fans and Atlanta fans, you're like, we're gonna win a championship.
Yeah, it's like, true.
Oh, they're juiced right now. Toronto, not so much. But then you got to give a newcomer a chance. You know what I mean? Like Kelly Oubre struggling. You'll see other guys struggling, newcomers struggling. And I think Marc Gasol in a Laker uniform still seems pretty odd. But you got to remember they didn't get to work out with everybody like they typically would in the offseason, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't a typical training camp. I think if the NBA could go back, or the teams could go back, maybe they would have played more preseason games. You know what I mean? Because there seemed a little rustiness. So I wouldn't beat up Baines just yet.
Yeah.
Just wait. Now, if you're feeling like this in late January, then that's a different ball game. But for anybody that's a newcomer for a team right now, I'd have patience because for the rookies, there was no summer league.
Yeah. So
if a rookie is playing well right now, they're going to be really good.
Yeah.
There's no summer league. They got a shortened training camp. Like, believe that they're probably pretty good if they're doing well. But for anybody struggling, whether it's a rookie or a veteran on a new team, we all got to give them a little bit of a pass for at least a month.
Yeah,
Come late January, if Baines is struggling, then raise your eyebrow.
Yeah, that's some helpful context, and that's something that many fans don't have, is like just like the understanding that, look, this is such a strange season, not a lot of prep time, as you said, no summer league, so that obviously plays a factor into this. But I just think what's going to be interesting this season to me for the Raptors is looking at, Kyle Lowry, who still seems to be the ageless wonder. I mean, he's increasing in age, but still playing very well, and it's so impactful intangibles wise on that Raptors team in terms of leadership. And Pascal Siakam, I mean, you must have seen Pascal in the bubble struggle, as we all saw, and I think you could just see that there's a newfound confidence there that, look, I want to prove that I'm still a star in this league. So I think those two players, it's just going to be very interesting to see, like, can Raptors fans still see them continue to excel on the court?
Yeah. And another thing, speaking of the adjustment, too, for both of those guys in the Raptors organization, like, they're in Tampa.
Yeah.
I was on one Zoom call listening to Pascal, right? And he just kind of threw me off. And I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. He goes, yeah, I got to go look for an apartment.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's right, they're in Tampa. Like, they get a temporary apartment. Like, I hope somebody's doing a documentary on this Raptors team.
Yeah.
To not only not play with any fans, but not even be home. Like, what they've had to endure is tougher than any team in the league. No question. You're not home. You're not in your arena. You're not in your country. And every game is a road game.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some Raptors fans are flying down to Tampa because I'm guessing in Florida where everything is open. They're able to attend games. And that probably means a lot for Toronto fans to go down there. They're risking getting COVID in the process by going down to Florida, but I don't know that any team has it harder. And I hope that instead of having an adverse effect on them, that it brings them tighter together, is a part of the fabric of what could be a successful season. I do think the Raptors have the talent to make it back to the finals.
Yeah.
Problem is, there's 5 other teams in the East that can too. It's a great team in the East could make it to the finals or lose in the first round.
Yeah.
The main key for me is don't finish past 1 or 2. Because if you think about it, you got Toronto, right? Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, Brooklyn. I'm missing somebody. There's a 6.
Miami.
Oh, Miami.
Yeah.
Which all 6 of those teams could represent the East in the final. Right? 7 and 8, maybe there's an Atlanta in there, maybe there's an Orlando in there. Cleveland may surprise some people. Washington. Not that I'm saying those are easy outs or anything like that. The days of the easy road through the Eastern Conference that LeBron James enjoyed, those days are over.
Yeah.
So I that's where I think the Raptors have to certainly dial in, because your goal is to finish first or second in the East and then go from there. If you don't, it's going to be a battle royal trying to survive throughout the playoffs. And it's not that it was going to be easy at all, but your road certainly becomes a lot harder.
No doubt. And another thing too, Mark, with the start of this season, what we're seeing and you saw in the bubble is just the rise of plethora of Canadian basketball talent. We saw Jamal Murray and what he did in the bubble with the Denver Nuggets. We've seen what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with OKC start to the season, RJ Barrett. What do you think it just says just about Canadian basketball at the moment? Because it's not just the Raptors that are, captivating fans across this country, but we're also seeing a plethora of homegrown talent also succeed on the court as well.
I mean, Canada's, to me, proven to be probably the number 2 country talent-wise in the world. You'll get guys from France. France certainly has some talent. You're getting people from Africa, but Africa's such a big continent, you know, and a lot of the guys with African ties actually were born in the States. So, Germany will have one or two here or there, Spain will have a few here or there, but nobody outside the United States is producing out. Maybe I could be wrong, but I don't think anybody's producing more talent in the NBA than Canada is. So the question to Canada is, what happens in the next Olympics? Like, to me, this is just being realistic, even though we could step on our own foot. The United States just has too much talent. So we bring our A team, I think it's going to be extremely difficult to beat. However, if Canada brings its A team, they probably could give the biggest challenge. But will they bring their A team? I mean, they gotta. I don't know if Nash. I don't think Nash is in charge of that anymore with his new title. Maybe he is, but to me, it's inexcusable for Canada not to medal anymore.
I want to shift gear.
Yeah. If you think I'm wrong.
No. I think Look, I think for sure. I think with the depth of talent that we have, we should medal. The big question is just going to be, can we get all of the eligible guys to put on the red and white? I mean, that was a big question.
But that's what I don't get. Is like, why wouldn't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, I agree with you, Mark.
Why wouldn't they, unless they're injured? All the top guys in the U.S. come. So, to me, I don't know if it's gold medal or silver medal or bust, but it at least has to be playing for the bronze or bust.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not at minimum playing for the bronze medal, something's not right, because, as you said, like, there's just too much talent there. I mean, with Murray and Wiggins and, I could go on and on and on, and I hear you guys got some young teen phenom coming up.
Yep, Elijah Fisher.
Yeah, and so I got to get to, know about him. There's just, you got talent to fill an entire roster, and have a talented roster. You got size, you got the guards, you got everything. I think Murray will probably be the star of the team. Shea would be a good, solid player too, but it'd be Murray and a lot of other talented players to boot.
Yeah, and you got Nick Nurse coaching, who's the reigning coach of the year, and I think he's a guy that certainly can rally the troops, if you will, and get guys to come play for Team Canada, which is big, right? Like, again, convincing those guys to put on the red and white. Well, you got a guy, Nick Nurse, who's certainly very vested into the program and growing Canada basketball.
Yeah. No, Nick's, I got a chance to get to know Nick a lot more in the bubble, man.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
Any good stories? Any good Nick Nurse stories?
Well, it's funny. I got this sitting right here. So I'm sure you've seen these.
Of course.
Yeah, these masks. I just happen to have mine nearby.
Yep.
And so the lady that did this mask, her name eludes me, so I forget.
Nadia Lloyd. Nadia Lloyd is her name.
Lloyd.
Yeah.
Yes. Shout out to Nadia Lloyd.
Yes, shout out.
Support her. So Nick's wife, I guess she used to be one of their neighbors, him and his wife's neighbor. And when she made these masks, Nick's wife made him aware of them. And so he started wearing these, and I guess he bought them for everybody in the organization.
Yep.
And I was able to land my hands on one of them. But I do think what that says, like, for me as an African American, for somebody that's not African American, for somebody particularly who is white, to wear these, to buy these and pass this out to their team, to me speaks volumes, because there's always times where, you know, African Americans or people of color will yell for help.
Yep.
And it goes on deaf ears because sadly people are used to us yelling all the time.
Yep.
So when you see somebody white say, hey, this cause is important, you know, Black Lives Matter, we need to help people of color, we need to help women, we need this world to be a better place, and to wear a mask like this, like, you know, Nick did, that to me speaks volumes about him as a human being.
No doubt. And I think that's certainly one of the lessons this year, and it's something that I definitely wanted to ask you, Marc, is, of course, you were in the bubble and you experienced, you know, you covered the restart, the playoffs, and you also, you know, covered the Wildcat strike with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I'm just curious for you, what did you learn about that experience as a journalist and reporter? And how do those conversations that were had in the bubble, as well as the tangible changes that arose from that, from the Bucks walking off the court, how do those conversations and that momentum keep going?
That's a good question. I applaud the Bucks for having the guts to do what they did. And Jacob Blake was shot in their state. So to me, it was only poetic for them to be the team to do it. And it sparked something beautiful. It not only caused the NBA to take a pause for 3 days and allowed the players to figure out a new focus, you know, which ended up being voting, which ended up impacting the election, because they were able to get most of the arenas open for voting polls. And I've talked to people who voted in arenas, and Georgia was one of the State Farm Arena in Atlanta was one of the first ones open, and that certainly impacted the election greatly. But then baseball followed, NHL followed, you know, the WNBA followed, Naomi Osaka followed. So there was history made in that arena that I'm so proud to be a part of. I'm proud to be a bubble alumnus. I could tell you stories all day about those 3 months. It's funny, my reporter buddy said, man, I think you miss being there. And I'm like, there's certainly some things I do miss. But what they did was historical. And I think as time passes, people will give them more respect for doing that. To me, that was like a John Carlos, Tommy Smith moment, you know, Kaepernick moment, a moment that's going to be in the history books for a long time. And uniquely, the night before, which kind of has gotten lost, is that the Raptors and the Bucks had a meeting where they discussed doing the exact same thing. And we're going to meet again about it the day that the Bucks decided not to play. So it would have been interesting to see if it was the Raptors, and if the Raptors and Celtics had an opportunity to play each other, would they have been the ones to do it, you know? But the Bucks, it worked out the way it should have.
Last question for you, Marc, before we let you go. You talked earlier about the importance of building relationships, and you mentioned how some players like Tony Parker, Clyde Drexler reach out to you, ask you how you're doing. As a young journalist or reporter that's breaking into this business and breaking into perhaps covering a sport like basketball, how important is that process of developing those relationships? And how long does it take for you to sort of feel comfortable with doing that? Because a relationship just doesn't happen overnight. It's a long and an evolving process.
No, it's natural. I mean, having access to the players helps.
Yeah, no kidding.
You can't build anything right now. I talked to an NFL reporter who was a first year covered NFL, and he said he was around the players one time at a charity event that a player got got fined for having. But normal times, those times in the locker room, those times in, the practices, those times where you might bump into somebody in a restaurant, those all build relationships, and it's natural. It's all natural. It doesn't, I gotten to be really cool with Kyle Lowry. Chauncey Billups helped that. And so, and I don't think Kyle trusts a lot of people, but it's always about who you know. Having 20 years in this business and people reading my stories, maybe that makes them comfortable. I remember one player, who was a rookie, saying, man, Marc Spears is interviewing me. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, there you go.
That's cool. You know what I mean? So it kind of happens with times. A lot of times it's natural. But we got to get healthy, this world healthy, and get access to the rooms, because, one thing that I've always done is I talk to everybody.
Yeah.
It's not just the GM, the president, the stars. No, I talk to the guy that's coming in and out from the G League. As you know, if you covered Pascal Siakam,
yep,
if you have that mentality as a reporter, it probably ended up helping you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you remembered you talked to him when he wasn't big.
Yeah.
I talked to the people that clean the floors, to sell the food, the ushers, people passing out the stats. Because you just never, one, I just like treating everybody the same, treating everybody great. And two, I remember David Griffin, the Hornets president, not the Hornets, the Pelicans president, when I first started, he was passing the stats.
Yep.
He's the president. So, I always say, you never know who you're talking to or who somebody could become. So it's good to be good to everybody, and you just never know who had it. It doesn't always have to be the big name to give you help or give you information. So just be good to everybody, man. Just like when your stuff blows up super huge, man, maybe you still remember me.
Oh, I'll always remember you, Marc. You appear on a lot of our radio stations and TV stations here in Canada, and always provide some great work. So Marc Spears is the senior NBA writer for ESPN's The Undefeated. Marc, I wish you all the best for the rest of the NBA season. Let's do this again soon on the Raptors Endgame podcast.
All right, brother. Happy New Year, brother. Happy New Year, brother. Happy New Year, brother. Happy New